And we are back on SportsManRadio. I'm your host, Chris Shanfeld, and I'm now joined by former NFL Pro Bowl linebacker Chad Brown. Welcome back to the show, Chad. How's it going?
I'm great, Chris. Thanks for having me on, man.
As always, it's a pleasure. And last night we had Sunday Night Football. We had two of the most storied franchises in the NFL with the Chicago Bears taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bears got off to a fast start, leading at the end of the first quarter, 17-0. The Steelers did pull back a comeback, though, to only trail the Bears 23-20 at the end of the third quarter. Chicago ended up pulling away with the victory, 40-23 by the end of the fourth quarter. As a former NFL linebacker, Chad, what are your thoughts on this Chicago Bears defense? It seems like they could take away the football better than any other defense in the NFL.
There was a game last night. You weren't watching the Emmys like I was?
Not at all, man. As a diehard Chicago Bears fan, I had to watch this game. I had to.
All right, well, so was I. You got to be, if you're a Bears fan, you got to be excited about that. It's one thing to lead the league and, yards allowed or points scored, but when you can take away the football consistently and repeatedly, like the Bears defense did last night, and it's done for a while now, that's something to be excited about as a Bears fan. And if you're part of the Bears team, you realize you're never really out of the game because we got a lot of guys on defense who can just take the ball away from the opponent. And that's something that's actually far more rare in the NFL than it should be.
The Bears have as many defensive touchdowns as the Jaguars do offensive touchdowns. I just think that's crazy. Last night, they actually forced, I think a total of 4 fumbles. They recovered 3 of them, and I think they even picked off Big Ben twice. What are your thoughts on this Pittsburgh Steelers team? Right now, they're 0-3. It just doesn't seem like they have enough. I hate to say it. They have no running game. The offensive line is just horrible. I hate to say it. I know Antonio Brown had a great game last night, but I just don't think they have a true number 1 wide receiver. And, of course, that Pittsburgh Steelers defense, it just isn't what we think. It just doesn't seem like the steel curtain that we think about. I know it's early, but do the Pittsburgh Steelers have a chance to have a winning record, Chad?
I have tremendous faith in the Steelers organization, and their model for fielding a successful, consistent playoff team perhaps is really unparalleled in the NFL. When you walk into the office, you see the Lombardi trophies. The proof is there, just being around the Pittsburgh Steelers. But this year's version of the Steelers, I've got to agree with you. The inability to consistently run the ball, which has always been something the Steelers have been able to lay their hat on until the last couple of years. Putting Ben in situations where he feels forced to force the ball around the field, which leads to turnovers. The offensive line, which is usually a point of pride for the Steelers, is nowhere near the units that they had in the past. And their defense has difficult stopping people on first down. It's put people in predictable situations where they can blitz them. And even on third down, they're not very good at getting off the field, which is a hallmark of Dick LeBeau's defense, is his ability to get his defense into those third long situations for him to dial up a blitz and get home, put pressure on your quarterback. They do all those things. They run the ball, Ben can pass the ball, they can get off the have occasional good first down or get off the field on third down. They do all those things occasionally. They do none of them consistently well enough for them to actually, in my mind, be a team that can actually turn around. I mean, we saw them, put a couple of drives together, made a couple of plays last night, but again, not enough consistency to, I think for anybody to look at that team and go, you know what, they're going to turn us around, they're going to be a playoff team. I just don't see it.
What do you think about Steelers offensive coordinator Todd Haley? Last year, we heard it all season long about the relationship of quarterback Ben Roethlisberger and Todd Haley. It just wasn't working out, it seemed like. Well, he's still the Steelers offensive coordinator, and, this offense just is not looking right. It just doesn't seem like they've supported Big Ben with enough talent that he needs. I know last night they got back tight end Heath Miller, which was a huge plus, but, other than Heath Miller, he really doesn't have a great target, in my opinion. How much should we blame, Todd Haley with this?
I think Todd Haley deserves some of the blame. You know, I think it's important for a coordinator and a quarterback to be on the same page. And I play with Ben, and Ben can be stubborn. But when, you know, there's very few quarterbacks who are on the caliber of Ben Roethlisberger. And in my mind, as an offensive coordinator, it seems like it'd be important to make sure you're on the same page and you're calling plays that your quarterback likes and thinks that he can run successfully. I think clearly they're not on the same page. As far as the weapons go, you know, Antonio Brown put up almost 200 yards receiving last night, you know, after he and Haley got into an argument last week on the sidelines about him not being targeted enough. So, you know, that's kind of reactive kind of coaching. Instead of having a plan week in and week out, Antonio Brown's our guy who can stretch the field. You don't throw him the ball enough last week, you throw him the ball more this week. Again, what's your plan? What's your overall goal for each game, and how are you setting up your playmakers to make plays? I'm not seeing too many of those things from Todd Haley in this offense. And again, another reason why I'm not very optimistic about them turning this 0-3 start around and making the playoffs. I mean, they do play an 0-3 team next week, so somebody's got to win next week between them and the Vikings. But, you know, at this point, even that's in question for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Let's go ahead and talk about the Chicago Bears now. After a 10-6 record and just missing the playoffs last season, they decided to fire head coach Lovie Smith and bring in an offensive-minded coach and Mark Trestman, who also brings along a very nice coaching staff, including offensive coordinator Aaron Kromer and defensive coordinator Mel Tucker. They have started the season off 3-0, defeating, you know, some pretty good teams that were in the playoffs just last year in the Bengals and Vikings, and then, of course, last night, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Are the Chicago Bears for real this season, Chad?
They are. You know, I've lived in Denver, so I'm familiar with Jay Cutler.
You're familiar with the entire Chicago Bears team. I mean, you got Jay Cutler, Brandon Marshall, DJ Williams. I mean, you could go on and on.
Right. Yeah, this is true. I'm familiar with all those guys, actually. But my point about Jay was I'm familiar with the less mature version of Jay Cutler. You know, Jay, I think, has grown up over the last couple seasons. Last season in particular, seems to kind of pick up where he left off last season, this season. And I'm impressed. I have to say that I'm impressed. You know, Matt Forte goes out and averages 5.4 yards a carry. They're finding ways to get a number of receivers going. Last night, he threw the ball to, let me check my stats here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 receivers caught balls for him. You know, Michael Bush didn't make exactly, you know, break the long-distance running records, but he was, you know, kind of pounding the ball in there a little bit. They got a nice 1-2 punch. The height and the size of those receivers, Marshall and Alshon Jeffries, Martellus Bennett, I think, is going to end up being a good weapon. Didn't have his best statistical game last night, but we saw what plays he can make last week. I think there's a lot to like about this Bears team, and I'm starting to remove my Cutler prejudice and kind of think of him as a guy who is going to cost them team games, and now I think of him more as a guy who's going to help his team win games.
You know, I think the main stat line from last night's game is Jay Cutler's stat line. I mean, he was 20 for 30, I think just over 160 or 180 yards. Only 1 touchdown, but 0 interceptions. I mean, that's pretty rare. 0 interceptions for Jay Cutler.
It is. And, you know, he's had a habit of holding the ball too long or taking sacks. He's definitely getting the ball away a lot more quickly. You know, a lot of that is a short passing game that Trestman is doing. Jay only averaged 5.3 yards of completion last night, so I mean, he wasn't throwing the ball very much downfield. At the same time, the Steelers defense actually came and put together a pretty good effort in the second half. So some credit is due to the Steelers defense taking away those deep throws from Jay Cutler. But I like at the kind of when the game was still in balance, I like for him on that drive, he had 3 big third down plays. He had the long throw to Marshall. He had the scramble, which got him the first down. He put his shoulder down and ran over that Steelers DB. He also had another third down play, which led to a touchdown on that drive. So, you know, you want your quarterback to make plays, but more importantly, you want your quarterback to make plays when the game is on the line, when it's the time when plays need to be made, and Jay Cutler was able to do that last night.
this show is out of Chicago, and I try not to be biased, but I got to get your opinion because I know 100% you will not be biased by this answer. Is Jay Cutler, or can Jay Cutler be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL?
Top 10? Absolutely. Absolutely. Elite in the Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers category. I think he may just be a tick below that, but definitely a top 10 quarterback. Look around the league, I can't think of 22 other quarterbacks who I'd put ahead of him to remove him from the top 10.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And Chad, one last thing I got to ask you before I let you go, and this is a totally different topic, and it's about the Cleveland Browns, who last week traded their third overall pick from just a year ago, Trent Richardson, to the Colts for a first-round draft pick. Personally, I don't think this was really a smart trade by the Browns. I don't get why you want to trade arguably the best player on your team, but they did it. And, I just got to get your thoughts on this trade. I mean, I think everybody thought this was a joke or just thought it was not real when they heard the news break.
I was certainly shocked when I heard the news, but I can understand where both teams were coming from. For the Colts, you've got a quarterback in your future with Andrew Luck, and you'd like to have a running back, and particularly a running back who you had graded only second in the draft behind Andrew Luck. So from a scouting perspective, from a general manager perspective, they feel that they got tremendous value by getting this guy who they had targeted as the second best player in the draft. So for them, they get a young runner. It may mix up a little bit, but it's for the most part pretty healthy, who they absolutely adored come out of the draft last year. From the Cleveland Browns perspective, I think they realized that Brandon Weeden is not going to be the quarterback of their future, and to stockpile another first-round pick that would allow them to move up in the draft, where they probably think there's going to be a number of quarterbacks who can come out next year who can help them, and they can see as the quarterback of the future for the Cleveland Browns. Then I understand that as well. It kind of sucks to be a player in the Cleveland Browns locker room when they're making trades that don't really help the team this year, that are all about next year, and you wonder how long they can continue to kind of play under that mindset. At the same time, they were able to get a win yesterday. So the NFL is funny. Just when you think you're missing what you and I would think of as their best offensive player, which is no disrespect to Joe Thomas, the All-Pro Bowl tackle they got, Trent Richardson, they go out and win the ball game. So it's interesting how that kind of stuff works out. But I see what they're doing on both sides of it. I'm just not sure who actually ends up winning this trade. I guess we won't know until we see what the Cleveland Browns do with that extra first-round pick next season.
You got that right. And, it's funny that the Browns did win that game yesterday. They start Brian Hoyer at quarterback. They're missing Trent Richardson for the first time. This time without injury, of course. And they go out and defeat the Minnesota Vikings. I just think that's crazy. Jordan Cameron has become a hell of a player. It seems like he had 3 touchdowns yesterday. And for Trent Richardson, his first rush as an Indianapolis Colt is a 1-yard touchdown, so you can never go wrong with that. Chad, as always, I really appreciate your time. Before I let you go, is there anything else you got for us?
It's that point in the season where we're 3 games in, and we still don't quite know what to think about so many of these teams. If you think about who is the third best team in the AFC, I don't know. I mean, everyone recognizes the Broncos as number 1, but then after that, where do you go? So it's such an interesting point in the season. The Miami Dolphins are undefeated. The New York Giants haven't won a ball game. So it's I think this is why we love the game. Some people call it parity. I just call it you just never know what the heck you're going to get until about 5 or 6 weeks in the season, and teams begin to either pick up their stride or show us exactly who they are. So I love it. It's another awesome week of NFL football, and another week where we go, I don't know what's going to happen next week.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it, Chad. And I'm sorry, one more thing, and that is, you mentioned you're in Denver. What's the vibe in Denver with the Denver Broncos having so much success so early, but of course with the problems coming out with Pro Bowl linebacker Von Miller?
There's a great deal of optimism around the team, obviously, when Peyton Manning's playing at the level he's playing at, 9 touchdown passes in 2 games. You can't help but be optimistic. At the same time, this whole Von Miller thing is really unfortunate. He's Hall of Fame skill player, but he is just one mistake away from getting himself banned from the NFL for one whole season. His off the field mistakes are going to end up costing him, a $40 million guaranteed signing bonus coming up here when his contract is done. He put himself in a pretty bad situation here. But he's supposedly, going to get himself cleaned up. His parents have moved in town with him and try to get that stuff squared away. Also, they're going to be missing Ryan Clady for the rest of the season. They're the Pro Bowl tackle, the protected for Peyton Manning's blindside. So, there's definitely some issues. But at the same time, you go out and you put up almost 100 points in 2 games. That offense can kind of cover up for almost any issue out there. I just would like to see them play some tougher games and kind of be seasoned and hardened and toughened, so when they get to the playoffs, they're prepared to win the close games that they couldn't do last year when the Ravens beat them on the way to the Ravens playing the Super Bowl.
Hey, man, they're looking pretty good so far throughout the first 2 games. Of course, they play tonight, Monday Night Football against the Oakland Raiders. Chad, as always, thanks a lot, man. Take care.
I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for having me on.